Hey guys, wanted to talk real quickly about some of my views towards Citizens United and the corruption that it has caused throughout our political system. I saw someone else making this point a few days ago and it really hit home for me. The Tea Party, which has, according to the polls, semi-radical views and Occupy Wall Street, the whole movement, has fairly mainstream views as far as the American people are concerned about holding the banks accountable. You could read website after website about what exactly Occupy was about, but the gist of it was get the banks off the government, stop them funding the government, the campaigns that is, so that they will actually regulate the banks and we won't have economic collapses. And it might also be a good idea to prosecute some of these guys so that they don't commit massive fraud every couple of years. Okay, so we had the bailout in 2008 and all the anger that came from that created two grassroots movements, the Tea Party on the right and the Occupy movement on the left. Now the major difference, they were both upset about the same thing, the bailouts. The little guy got screwed while the banks got bailed out. The only difference is that where the Tea Party blamed the government, Occupy blamed the banks. Now they're both right, but I'm going to explain why Occupy is more right than, no pun intended, the Tea Party. Because of the way we have our political donations, our campaign finance laws set up, it's not the government telling the banks what they are and aren't going to do. It's not government intervention. It's not a lack. It isn't a lack of regulation that's the problem. It's the bankers run amok that's the problem because they have no rules. They have paid and bought off the government to take away the rules. So in effect, you have the banks up here, the banks, lobbyists, and the corporate donors up here telling the government that the government is not going to regulate them. So even though it seems like you have the government up here and they're going to regulate the banks, because of the money in politics, that power dynamic is shifted so that the banks are actually the bosses of the politicians in Washington. So that's why I believe the Occupy movement got it right. In a sense, although the government definitely, didn't have to get bought, didn't have to be corrupted, but that's the system that we have thanks to Citizens United. And this point I saw being made by Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks a few days ago. The Tea Party, because of the corporate backing, the corporations backing them, because they represent the establishment view of let's get rid of the government regulation so that we can do more fraud. They leave out that last part, but that's basically the gist of it. The Tea Party, because of their funding from the Koch brothers and other corporations and different super PACs, have roughly 60 members in Congress. Even though they're, according to the polls, radical. Occupy, which the majority of Americans agree with, has this many congressmen in Washington. Think about that. 60 to zip. Mainstream, 0. Radical, 60. It's not because the American people support it, it's because the money supports it. The Koch brothers donate all this flood, millions of dollars, into these grassroots organizations, so-called grassroots organizations, which are really fronts for the Koch brothers and other corporate interests. And they, in turn, funnel that money to the politicians, which they run the ads, which get them the votes, which get them reelected, which puts them in a position of power to screw over us, the average American. So that was just quickly, I just wanted to share my thoughts about the whole Tea Party versus Occupy and how they were both mad about the bailouts, but Tea Party, bless their heart, they got led around by the nose by the Koch brothers, whereas Occupy was like, almost went to the other extreme. They said, we don't even have a spokesperson, we don't have there's no leader of this thing to go on TV and tell people, okay, A, B, and C, this is why we're really upset. And what that was the big failure, because what that allowed the media to do, which they would have done anyway, but it made it much, much easier for them to do, is say, this was what you heard day in, day out, especially in the height of the Occupy movement. These guys don't even know what they're angry about. They don't have a message. No one knows. It's just a bunch of dirty hippies. I saw several different surveys that said the majority of Occupy protesters not just had jobs, had good paying jobs, 100,000 plus a year jobs. These weren't dirty bums, were not the core of the Occupy movement as the mainstream media portrayed them. So I just kind of wanted to share my 2 cents about that. Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.